you can't let people ruin a film. I mean, it's true enough that you can't let them ruin a rare film. Print comes from Europe, and you go to see it, and somebody is talking, or eating, making noise. I mean, to me, it's not a moral question in the sense that those people don't actually have a right to do that. I think they do have a right to do it. They have a right to ruin the film for other people. I think everybody has the right to do whatever they want. But what that vision of the world, that kind of Hobbesian vision of the world, what that indicates then is that also means you have the right to stop people. So there's this ridiculous woman. She came in late, of course. She started making noise. She was eating, I think. She changed her seat and she sat right in front of me. And I was so annoyed that she was sitting in front of me that I started to kick her chair. And I was hoping that by kicking her chair I would get her to move. And she turned to me and she said, Stop kicking the chair. And I said, well, next time, why don't you get here on time? And so she said, what does that have to do with anything? But she didn't wait to hear an answer. She just sort of went back to watching the movie. But I went back to continuing to kick her chair. And then she got up, and now she was actually stood up and was really disrupting me. So I knocked her down. And unfortunately, she seemed to hurt herself really badly. I wasn't intending to hurt her badly. I mean, I didn't knock her down with a certain amount of force, and I knew I was angry and that she sounded like she was in terrible pain. And I actually felt bad, I was very angry that she was ruining my experience of the film, but I thought, she doesn't really deserve to be wailing in pain like that. But of course, her pain was not enough for me to get up and do anything about it. I wasn't going to get up and apologize. I wasn't going to help carry her out into the lobby, because then I would be missing the film, And really, it is true that, if somebody were having a heart attack, or, it's a strange thing to admit, but really, it would be very hard for me to, to feel any sense of moral compunction.
Junk Food Dinner 579. We've got 3 wacky films this week, junkies. First, Stunts Meet Rock in Brian Trenchard Smith's Stunt Rock. Next, a group of cinephiles watch movies all day long in Cinemania. Finally, frontiersmen run afoul of subterranean monsters in The Burglars.
Let's take the movies more seriously, as we have done every week for more than 1,300 weeks. 1,300 weeks of our dumping on Hollywood, seriously. Mm-hmm. We probably have dumped on Hollywood and the bad films and the bad values of those films, artistic and otherwise, more than any other people in the country for the last 20 years.
Welcome to Junk Food Dinner, episode 579. This is the podcast where each week we scour the internet, video stores, and cable television, searching for the most outrageous and interesting cult films. In Ohio, I am Kevin Moss, and I'm joined by my California co-host Parker Bowman in the 559, and Sean Byron in LA, and our special guest host this week, Zach, from the Shuffle Repeat podcast. This week, we delve into the world of various freaks and weirdos with Stunt Rock from 1978, Cinemania from 2002, and The Burglars from 2008. But first, gentlemen, how you doing this week? Zach, thank you for joining us once again.
Thank you. It's good to be back and good to be actively engaged in podcasting again. I think last time I was in limbo between shows, so I'm glad to be here with something to tell people to listen to.
Yeah, so let us know what's the concept behind Shuffle Repeat. I know you've Mr. Bowman here was a recent guest on the show.
Yeah, so honestly, not to blow too much smoke up your ass, but I would probably describe Shuffle Repeat as the musical equivalent of Junk Food Dinner. It's basically just me and my friend Ian, who I've known since high school, and we basically explore the nooks and crannies of popular and unpopular music, anything from German death metal from a 3-year period in the 90s to jazz fusion from the 70s to, we got episodes on like African jazz, Mexican psychedelic, and all sorts of crazy things coming up in the pipeline. So yeah, if you're interested in cult music as much as cult movies, just give us a listen. And yeah, we just had Parker on. We talked about ska punk, probably the most intellectualized conversation about ska punk that's occurred in the past 15 years at least, which was a really good time.
And we ate mozzarella sticks while talking about ska, as is tradition now.
That's right.
What were some of the ska punk albums you brought up, Parker?
We talked about Losing Streak by Less Than Jake. We talked about Why Do They Rock So Hard by Real Big Fish. We talked about the Krusty Watch Guys, a Dayton, Ohio favorite.
Ooh.
Skink
and Pickle?
No, Skink and Pickle.
All right.
Talked about Din. Those guys were sweet.
Yeah.
Remember
the Pilfers? You remember those guys?
I do remember those guys vaguely. I think they were one of those. I think they were on one of those labels that's like way too two-tone for my taste.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly. There were some bands I stayed away from, just because they had like way too much like horns and not enough guitars.
I thought that's what ska was all about. Gotta get those horns.
Well, that's true. Horns are a big part of it, but for me, in my tastes, I gotta have those guitars louder than the horns.
So you're a pop punk guy first, a ska man second.
Exactly.
Okay, fair enough.
Honestly, I'm still rattled by this revelation that mozzarella sticks are the ska food of choice. I would have thought it would have been, like a real big plate of fish and chips, maybe something like that.
Bugles.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, those both work. But mozzarella sticks. It's perfect. You just pop them in. You can skank while you got a big handful of them.
Can I pogo with one in my mouth?
Yeah, you can pogo with one in your mouth and one in each hand.
All right, I'm on board. You sold me on these mozzarella sticks.
Well, sweet. So I guess, obviously people listening to this, where to find podcasts. Go look for Shuffle.Repeat. Shuffle Repeat in wherever you get podcasts and listen to that. Check out Parker talking about ska punk. So yeah, that sounds sweet.
Yeah.
Well, how you guys' week's been? You guys been getting into anything? Anything exciting? Any movie-related watching adventures?
I've been watching. It's not necessarily a movie, but I fell deep into this, and I've watched about 5 hours so far. But I've been watching. I know, Zach, you're probably familiar with this. I've been watching the Chris Chan documentaries on YouTube.
Who the hell is Chris Chan?
You don't even want to know, but I'll tell you. It's like a super weirdo who invented a mashup between Sonic and Pikachu and draws these comics where like
you don't even like Pokemans?
They just want a boyfriend-free girlfriend and like they kind of like wish death upon their enemies IRL. It's a very weird situation. And it got really dark recently, which is why I went down the rabbit hole.
I'm all about drinking that Pokemon period blood, son.
Okay.
I'll tell you guys off.
Is it like a feels good man kind of a thing?
That's more of a strange thing about the Johnsons kind of thing.
Yeah, you guys remember that movie? It's exactly like that.
Sadly, I do.
Yeah, it's we can talk about it during Goal Summer. We'll have to wait.
I'm a pervert.
Yeah. But yeah, somebody made because we live in a time now where everything we've ever done is like documented on a collection of message boards and like GeoCities websites and YouTube and stuff. Someone has hundreds and hundreds of hours documenting this like weird autism person's life and how sad it is and how much of a creep they are over a span of 20 years. And it's the most fascinating thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
I would never be interested in a documentary that chronicles people with, autism or obsessive compulsive disorder. So this sounds not up my alley whatsoever.
Totally.
Thank God we didn't have to watch anything like that this week. I had some fun this week. I went out a couple times to see movies amongst real live people, just like the heroes in our Cinemania movie. I went to the drive-in, first of all, on a weeknight, and I saw Spookies and Sorority Babes and the Slime Ball Bolorama, both on the drive-in screen. So that was a lot of fun.
That sounds incredible.
I was the most jealous I've ever been of anybody. I mean, we got to see it, Sean and I don't think you were there that year, Kevin, but we saw Spookies on the big screen, but not that big of a screen. So I'm deeply jealous.
Yeah, this was my first time seeing it theatrically, and yeah, seeing it at the drive-in was a lot of fun. And then, like I said, you had a double feature with Sorority Babes, which I thought went pretty well together. You know, you've got that little imp that could very well be a spooky in Sorority Babes, and you've got the hot trio of Michelle Bauer and Linnea Quigley and Brink Stevens, all in one film. So
the Holy Trinity.
Mm-hmm. So that was a lot of fun.
I love that imp.
Yeah.
That imp rules, and I'm surprised that this was even an option for you. I figured that movie was straight to video and that there was no film to be shown of it.
Yeah.
So that's surprising.
I would have thought the same.
Well, and you know who was the voice of that imp?
Cat Williams.
Dookie Flyswatter.
Oh, from Cards of Death.
And, yeah, lead singer of Haunted Garage.
Yeah, Dookie
Oh,
Flyswatter. Ricky in Austin, or formerly of Austin, is a big fan.
Yeah, he was
was he in Blood Diner?
He was in Blood Diner.
Yep.
He was also in Nightmare Sisters with the Holy Trinity again. So he was out there partying.
I think he may have passed in the past 5 years or something.
No, he's still out there. In fact, they just released a new Haunted Garage album that you can get on Bandcamp right now.
Maybe I'm thinking of the next 5 years.
Yeah, let's not count our chickens before they're hatched. But that was fun. And then on this weekend, I went to a real live movie theater and saw the new Nicolas Cage movie Pig with my dad. And that was weird.
Whoa.
on both counts.
It's weird to hear that you're, shelling out dollars for a Nick Cage feature.
I know. Well, it was one of those things. I was hanging out with my dad, and we wanted to go see a movie, and the options were limited at the theater that we were at. So it was like either this or that Anthony Bourdain documentary, and we went with the Nicolas Cage Pig movie. And it was a weird decision. I mean, it's not what I expected it to be. I mean, I read just like the general synopsis that like Nicolas Cage is like this mountain man that has a truffle pig that he uses, and then one day somebody steals the pig, and then he goes on an adventure to get the pig back. And I was expecting like some real over the top Nicolas Cage, like Mandy style, or like some of his more recent over the top roles. But it was a pretty muted performance, and the movie itself was pretty muted. While there was some kind of unexpected stuff within it, and it was more just a straight drama, like almost more like an art house drama than a exploitation film or a goofy action movie in any way. And I don't know how I felt about it. It was pretty slow. It was kind of boring at parts, but the parts that were exciting I liked. And Nicolas Cage, I like when he's a little, I like it a lot when he's a little under muted, so to speak. He's not going over the top. He's not talking in a fake Southern accent. He's not screaming. He's just being a subtle, filthy dude, and he's very filthy in this movie. And he like gets beat up and then just goes straight to look for his pig. Never cleans up. He just got blood dripping off him the whole movie. He's pretty gnarly, but like I said, he's pretty subdued, and I think it works. But overall, the movie was kind of slow. My dad didn't get it at all. He was like, it was weird. But
not enough AC/DC on the soundtrack for your dad.
Not a single AC/DC song, if you can believe it.
God damn it.
And so, but yeah, Pig. I can't say check it out, but maybe when it's streaming, worth a shot. Do you guys know? My dad asked me this, and I know generally what truffles are like. I've had stuff with like truffle oil, and like I've had it in restaurants. But what is a truffle?
It's like a mushroom, right? It's like a fungus, right?
It's a
Am I
fungus
wrong?
because, like in the movie, they look like black rocks almost. Like I don't know. I guess I'll have to Wikipedia it or something. But yeah, fungus. Okay, that makes sense. Because I was like, I don't think it's a plant, but I don't think it's a mineral. I don't know. I couldn't describe it. I was like, I know what it is. I've had it. So I don't know what it is.
I know it. You know what? They come from space, Kevin Moss, and if they land on your farm, all your crops are going to turn weird.
I knew it was something like that.
Yeah, I haven't seen the movie Pig because I don't like watching movies about cops.
Thank you, House of Pain.
Well, speaking of, I tried out a new donut shop this past week. I wanted to shout out the Donut Hole in La Puente, California.
Oh man, I saw the pictures of that. That place looks amazing. You drive through the donut.
Yeah. It's this building. It's like a long building with two donuts, one on each end that form this kind of donut tunnel that you drive through. You get your donuts right in the middle of there. It's all glass windows on the inside, so you see all the donuts. Pretty good donuts, very good donuts, I would say, and just a cool building. It's a building that I remember seeing like photos of this thing. I think probably in the California Crazy book, like when I was a kid.
It's pretty iconic. I've seen it before in books.
And I'd wanted to go there forever, and it's only 20 minutes from my house, and one of those things where I just never got around to it until this past weekend, and very glad that I did. I feel now that I've been there, I kind of regret that I didn't pick up any bacon donuts this week, based on the news that we're getting that pork is now illegal in California.
Jesus. Well, what kind of donuts did you get? Are you a glazed man, or you like a little frosting, sprinkles? What are you going with?
I mean, I like to mix it up, but if I'm going to a new place for the first time, I usually stick with the old-fashioned glazed, which I got one of those, which that's like, it's kind of the cakier donut. It's not like the raised donut, and it's in that weird shape where it's like, yeah, it's a ring, but it's also something else. It's like a ninja star. I don't even know how you describe those old-fashioned shapes. And then I got a maple bar. You got to get a maple bar. And what was the third one? Oh, an apple fritter. Got an apple fritter, a big honkin' apple fritter, which that's a meal in and of itself. This is all I ate on Sunday was these 3 donuts, but that's all I needed, man.
Damn. Well, yeah, and you got the experience of driving through a donut.
I loved it, It was like going to Disneyland for $3.75.
Right. That's awesome. What's the there's another iconic one out in LA where you don't drive through the donut, but it does have a giant donut as its signage.
Well,
right?
There is the world famous Randy's Donuts, which is, famous for that sign, but also famous for other reasons that have been chronicled on this very podcast.
Yep. Famous for being a spot where Sean Byron likes to kick the shit out of people.
Yeah.
My old stomping grounds, they call it.
Yeah. It was also in Iron Man Part 2, which is less famous than the time that Sean Byron tossed a trash can at somebody.
And also in that, what was it, 2012, or what was that movie? Remember the post-apocalyptic movie? Where the donut was rolling down the freeway.
Oh, yeah.
What year was that? Was it 2012?
Something like that. A year that's come and gone, and we're still here.
Yeah.
For now.
Anyhow, pork's illegal. I'm planning my exodus. I'm moving to some island that's just me and a bunch of pigs and a knife.
I'm also planning my exodus. I'm going to do the toxic waltz. That's just a joke.
Thank you.
And my little brother as well. We really enjoy that joke.
All right. Well, you guys want to check in with what kind of toxic waltzes the people out there in Junk Food Dinnerland have been doing?
Absolutely.
Hell yeah.
We got 2 15-second voicemails from the same number. Let's find out together what kind of nonsense we have here.
Regret. I've had a few, but then again, too few to mention.
Oh.
Okay, I get it. We asked for regrets, and this is what we get. Is the second one just the same thing?
time and active.
Okay.
All right. Well, you got us. Those were regrets.
Zach, how would you rate that on the boob scale? Is it even possible?
Well, I think it's a breach of copyright, and I think that's a federal offense now. So I think I'm going to have to give it 0 out of 5 just to be on the safe side.
All right. There you go.
Makes sense. All
right. Well, if you'd like to give us a call with some real regrets or any other feedback about Junk Food Dinner, please pick up the phone and dial us at 347-746-JUNK. That's 347-746-5865. Or send us an email at jfdpodcast@gmail.com. But better yet, just call and leave a message. That's really the only way we'll communicate with people. All right, that being said, let's get into some nerd news.
From the global resources of Junk Food Dinner worldwide, it's time for Nerd News.
The first piece of nerd news that I have is that the fine folks over there at Vinegar Syndrome and Arrow Video are working on ways to keep your wallet empty, releasing their slew of September and October releases. So Vinegar Syndrome announced its August releases, including Auntie Lee's Meat Pies, Tough Guys Don't Dance, which we'll be doing on the show here coming up, Terminal Island, Girl School Screamers, and then their VCS label is putting out Whatever It Takes, a action movie starring none other than Andrew Dice Clay, so that's got to be cool. And then a couple of porno movies, Phantasm, no, not the silver ball one, different kind of balls than this one, and then Phantasm Comes Again. It's part of their Peakorama collection, and that has
tickle your ass with a feather.
Yeah, it's got some of the top names in 70s porno having sex with one another, so that's fun. They also announced that through their partner label, their team up with AgFun Something Weird, they're going to be putting out She Freak, which I'm excited for. That's a movie that I've always wanted to see. It's a kind of a remake of Todd Browning's Freaks, and it's a chick with half of her face like a monster, half of her face normal, very Ricky Coogan-esque. So I've always wanted to see that, so I'm excited that's getting a nice Blu-ray release. And then over at Arrow in October, they announced they're putting out the Yokai Monster Collection. So this Halloween, you're not stuck with just the traditional monsters. You can watch some of the weirdest fucking Japanese monsters your eyes ever did see in a 3-disc set that collects all the Yokai Monster movies for like about $65. So, yeah. So plenty of fun stuff coming out in the upcoming months to keep your Blu-ray player kicking. Did you guys see any of these releases? And if so, are there any that are of interest to you?
I definitely want to see these yokais. I've been wanting to see those movies for a long time, and I always have them on my short list to do on the show. So I definitely want to see those. I'm glad they're going to have pixels. Also, if anybody out there likes yokais, you can go to patreon.com/junkfooddinner and vote for our Schlocktober themes, one option of which is yokais. So I'm trying to drive up the yokai vote so I can watch those movies. So yeah. And then She Beast sounds interesting, but I'm really sick of Kevin Smith gender swapping all these fucking properties, so I'm probably not going to see that.
It's called She Freak.
My mistake. I was thinking about Beast Man.
Okay.
She Beast Man.
Yeah, I think I'm with Bowman on this. Those yokais are, for me, the most exciting. I have not seen those yokai movies yet. I've wanted to see them for a long time. I kind of watched like the first 15 minutes of one, and it looked incredible. And yeah, I'm on board for that day one. And Arrow Video, man, has just been putting out like a lot of cool stuff lately. So I'm pretty thrilled, that this, and also will probably eventually land on the streaming service that you hit me to, Kevin, that I've been enjoying over the past week. So for me, that's the best news. But yeah, these Vinegar Syndrome releases look cool as well. I mean, Dice Clay and Don the Dragon Wilson in an action movie together, that sounds like a fun time, right? It sounds like a good afternoon.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm most excited about this She Freak and this Phantasm porno. I think that's what's going to get my money this month.
Tell me more about this Phantasm porno.
It was directed by the guy that directed Patrick.
Oh.
This Australian director. Like I said, it's got some of the top names in porno at the time from the 1970s.
American porno, or are these Australian titties that I'm going to be looking at?
No, you got none other than, like John Holmes in the mix.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, I don't know. It's, the guy that did Long Weekend directed the sequel, too. So, like, a lot of the exploitation guys from Australia got their start in these Phantasm pornos.
Well, call me back when the director of Stunt Rock does the third one.
That's Brian Trenchard Smith.
I know, but he's not listed here on either of these two, right?
Right. Well, okay, fair enough. But yeah, what about you, Zach? Any of these weird pornos do anything for you?
Well, I was trying to find pictures, but I didn't find anything yet. But I did find out there was apparently also a movie called Fangasm in '95, and that one's looking up my alley.
Okay.
So I think I'll be checking that out later. There is a very interesting parody of the Tall Man that does not look like Angus Scrimm at all, but it's probably for the best.
I'll check that out as well.
The silver balls look like a scrotum, which I appreciate.
Oh, yeah. And then there's also some xenomorph porn here. I'll be saving that for later.
Well, I got some news for you.
Let's hear it.
Let me find it real quick. Let me just pull it back up. Coming out this Halloween, we got yet another person taking advantage of the fact that Night of the Living Dead is public domain, and Night of the Animated Dead will be coming out on September 21st, and then later on DVD and Blu-ray on October 5th. This is an animated remake of the original movie with new scenes added, featuring voice acting by Josh Duhamel of Jupiter's Legacy and some other stuff. Catherine Isabel's in there. Will Sasso is in there.
Oh.
And other folks. I don't know. This is at least the third animated version of Night of the Living Dead, but I kind of like the other two. So I don't know. I'm into this. This is a fine way of going about this. Like, just so long as you're not some dickheads doing some weird sequel that sucks like everybody else does with Night of the Living Dead. If you want to do a nice little cartoon, I'm down for it. I'll probably give this a poke. But what about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that it's coming out on around Halloween, I think is appropriate. I mean, that might be a fun new way to add some spice to your yearly Halloween viewing of Night of the Living Dead. I know I like to watch it around the holiday season. So, yeah, maybe instead of watching the classic, I'll watch this animated version just for shits and giggles. Why not?
Yeah, I'd definitely be more interested to check out that out than any of these other Living Dead properties that I've seen announced.
For sure.
Which other properties were announced?
Well, isn't like one of the dude that's like kind of owns the rights to like Living Dead or whatever the weird situation? Doesn't he have like a sequel to Day of the Dead coming out or something?
Oh yeah, that's right.
And I think there's like a Return of the Living Dead 2, but they already did that, and I don't know. I keep seeing a lot of stuff in like VHS groups I'm in, and I think there's like 2 or 3 other movies coming out like with the of the dead suffix.
Yeah, I think because you can just remake it at will. So I think a lot of remakes always come out, and I think you're right. I think there's like a new Day of the Dead sequel, like in that lineage, like the remake lineage, and then I think there's just because John Russo, the other guy who made Night of the Living Dead, loves money, and because the movie's in public domain, everybody's just constantly making garbage sequels and remakes and reboots and stuff. But I don't know. Put some cartoons in there, and I'm in.
Yeah, I mean, I might check this out. Pretty much feel the same way as Kevin. Like if this comes out on TV around Halloween, and I happen to be in the same room as it, yeah, fine, I'll watch this. I'm sure it's not going to hold a candle to the original, but I mean, how could it? So that's fine.
It's just for fun.
Yeah. Well, I got some news. It's actually just a Blu-ray pick. I didn't really find too much news-wise to talk about this week, but my Blu-ray pick is coming at you from Kino Lorber. It's a title called The Valdez Horses, also known in some releases as Chino. This is a 1973 film about a runaway teenager and a mixed-race horse breeder striking up an unlikely friendship in the context of common hardships. And boy, does that sound like a dull plot description. Unlikely friendship in the context of common hardships? Jesus Christ, Kino. You could spice that up a little bit. This is starring Charles Bronson and, of course, Jill Ireland. It was produced by Dino De Laurentiis. And so it's an Italian and American co-production. The officially credited director is John Sturges, and it's like right near the end of his super long-ass career. But I guess it was reportedly co-directed by an Italian dude named Delio Coletti, who's got about 25 directing credits for movies that I don't know anything about. I've never seen this movie, Chino, a.k.a. The Valdez Horses. It's on the short list of 70s Bronson stuff that I haven't seen so far. So I'm excited that it's getting a new release here. I'm sure it's going to look great, and I'll get a chance to watch this eventually. I did want to recommend one Bronson feature that I caught this past weekend on YouTube. It's called Showdown at Boot Hill. It's like a 1958 black and white Western with Bronson and John Carradine. It's only about an hour long, and I thought it was really good. So, if you're in the mood for a black and white Western, check it out. It's free on YouTube with lots of pixels on it, so worth your time. But maybe if I'm in the mood for more Bronson, I'll be picking up this Chino disc from Kino Lorber. But what about you guys? You guys want to see Bronson breed horses, or maybe at least cozy up to Jill Ireland?
I would like to see Charles Bronson bred with a horse for a whole new super horseman that can fight vigilante style on the streets of New York.
Yeah, let's sell this to Adult Swim.
But yeah, I'm always up for more Charles Bronson in my life. In fact, I feel like there's been a Bronson deficiency as of late. So I will take these two recommendations to the bank, to the Kino Lorber bank, and ask for one disc, please. And the other one was on YouTube, you said?
Yeah, Showdown at Boot Hill.
How did it look on YouTube?
Looks great. It's got tons of pixels. Somebody, uploaded a pristine copy of it.
Would the nerds from Cinemania watch it in the state that it's in?
Only one of them, but he probably wouldn't admit it to anybody else, because Roberto would punch him in the face.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I like the idea of Bronson being kind of fused with a horse creature. I think that Boots Riley can make a good movie out of that.
All right. Well, you can thank your friend Kino Lorber for bringing it to you on disc.
I will. He's my favorite director.
All right. Well, there you have it. Well, while we wait for Kino Lorber to get those discs delivered to our house, we are going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we are going to get into our first feature movie of the evening, and that is Stunt Rock from 1978. So stick around.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Dom DeLuise.
It's so exciting. I'm going to be cooking. If you don't like that, I'll sleep with your sister.
The whole room?
The whole room, sure, but there'll be small portions.
How long is this going to take?
Oh, not long at all. Just want to bless the crowd. This'll take about 7 hours. There's going to be enough for everybody.
Can you do this in your own kitchen? I mean,
sure. Oh, sure. You know how beautiful this lady is? This is the greatest lady.
We're sorry.
And excuse me. I've got to. Oh, jeez. I'm sorry. Wait a minute. You have to mix it up. Good. And how about you? Very good. All right. Now what happens is, you jabronis hit the jackpot!
Join the Dom DeLuise Club at patreon.com/junkfooddinner if you smell what Mr. Dom DeLuise is cooking.
Hi, it's me, Dom DeLuise.
You've reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service.
Did I I get in the club? Did I get in the club?
Here, now you have a cigar. Compliments of the club.
Oh, isn't that wonderful? Let me walk you out.
Survive the test. Could be better than the best. You're a stunt rocker. Everybody looks at you. We all know something special by the things you do. Survive the test. Could be better than the best. You're the stunt rocker. Everybody looks at you. We all know something special by the things you do. You're the stunt rocker. Everybody looks at you. You know something special by the things you do. Stunt rocker. Stunt rocker, yeah. Stunt rocker. Stunt rocker, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, sorcery. This is Stunt Rock. It's superhuman. Super music. Super magic. And super amazing. You'll be compelled over the edge of sight and sound, and under the spell of mind-boggling action and music, pushed to the danger zone. It's a death wish at 120 decibels.
The highest heights. You fly the farthest flights. Living on borrowed time. Your life is on the line. You have to have a knack. When the wind is at your back, you must survive the test. You'll be better than the best.
Rock, the ultimate rush.
Welcome back to Junk Food Dinner. The first movie we're going to be taking a look at on the show this evening is Stunt Rock from 1978. This is a movie that I have wanted to do on the podcast since day one, but for one reason or another, just never got around to it. In fact, I realized that mistake when I was picking movies for this month, and I was like, holy shit, we haven't done Stunt Rock yet. We got to do that immediately. So that's what we're doing. For those of you that don't know, Stunt Rock is a 1978 movie directed by Brian Trenchard Smith, acclaimed Australian cult film director, which focuses on the stuntman Grant Page, another Australian who, if you've ever seen the often mentioned documentary Not Quite Hollywood, he's featured pretty prominently in that. He was he was pretty much the premier stuntman in Australia in the late 70s and throughout the 80s. And so Brian Trenchard Smith, I guess, wanted a vehicle to kind of showcase, how badass Grant Page was, and rightfully so. But I guess he figured, it had to have a little extra kick to it. So that's when he licensed the talents of the American rock group Sorcery, who were known at the time for their mixture of kind of, glam rock and magic. They were magicians. They had magicians in the group that performed magic tricks while they, rocked out. I guess the idea was to kind of take, the theatrics of like an Alice Cooper and then amp it up with like actual illusions and magic tricks and things like that. And so what you get is Stunt Rock, where they could have just, what they essentially do is just take concert footage of Sorcery and then highlight reels of some of Grant Page's best stunt work and mix it together. But then they also try to have this kind of flimsy narrative story that goes between where Grant Page comes to the United States to work on a TV show, and he hooks up with his cousin who is a member of this Sorcery band, and the two of them start hanging out with the female lead of this TV show that Grant Page is doing stunts for, along with a journalist who's writing a story on him, and they just kind of go back and forth from hanging out with the band to hanging out with Grant Page doing some stunt, or showing a throwback to when Grant Page did some sort of stunt back in Australia, or they show a couple other various Australian stuntmen and their crews doing a few stunts as well. But all in all, what initially made me aware of this movie is, I think in the very early days of YouTube, I think when it first came out, around 2006 or 8, whenever that was that YouTube was like kind of first hitting, I remember my friends were emailing around the trailer for this from YouTube and just like, have you ever seen this movie? This looks like the craziest movie, because the trailer is just amazing. It's just like all the best of the stunts and the weird Sorcery stage show, and you're just like, what the fuck is this movie? I have to see this. And so we were looking for it for years. Eventually, my buddy Paul bought a copy. I think it was when Brian Trenchard Smith was just selling them himself off of his website. You could get this on DVD from Brian Trenchard Smith's website. He ordered it offline. And
now tell me, who was the source of this videotape?
I think it was Brian Trenchard Smith. And so we would watch that, the DVD, quite frequently. And then 7 years ago to the day, Facebook reminded me today, I got a chance to see this on the drive-in screen at the Great Skyline Drive-In. So yeah, getting to see it at the drive-in was a lot of fun. But watching it this week for the show, having seen it multiple times, I think this still holds up as a lot of fun. I mean, it's interesting because, one, you do get to see a lot of really cool stunts performed by Grant Page, both specifically for Stunt Rock or things that were filmed previously in Australia that you might not get to see otherwise. And Sorcery, while they're not a great band, they are pretty hilarious to watch. It's funny, like I looked up Sorcery because they never released really any albums other than the soundtrack to this, and they were the backing band in Rocktober Blood and provided most of the songs for that movie, if you guys recall that one. But other than that, they never like really put out any proper albums. But I guess their shtick was pretty popular in LA in the late 70s, as I found a gig poster where Sorcery was playing, and opening for them was Van Halen. So there was a point in time when Van Halen was opening for Sorcery. So I find that pretty amusing. But yeah, I guess those guys fizzled out pretty much shortly after this, as I guess the people's appetite for magic mixed with rock and roll was not what Brian Trenchard Smith had hoped it would be. But nevertheless, I think it is a fun combination because, Sorcery is just so weird, and Grant Page is just so badass that I think it just makes for a fun combination. I mean, there's some tedious parts with the shoehorned storyline. I mean, I think it would have just been better had it been just a kind of pseudo documentary clips package of Grant Page, maybe even him just narrating some of his stunts. And then you just mix in the live footage of Sorcery for no reason whatsoever. You don't got to make it make sense. That's not what we're here for. We don't want it to make sense. We want the wizards. We want the car crashes. Basically, this movie's made for 16-year-old kids. They're stoned. They came to the drive-in. They want to see wizards. They want to see fireballs. They want to see cars crashing, and that's what you get. And for that, I think this movie is a lot of fun. And there's nothing really like it. I mean, we always talk about how stunt men are kind of some of the most underappreciated people in film. They don't get Oscars. They don't get a lot of acclaim. A lot of them you don't even know by name, but they are genuinely risking their lives a lot of times, especially back in the 70s and 80s to do some pretty fucking cool stuff on film. So it's cool that Brian Trenchard Smith wanted to recognize Grant Page and really showcase him, by name and by face. So, kind of hold him up in this movie. So if nothing else, is a love letter from Brian Trenchard Smith to Grant Page. I think it's awesome. And then you've just got Sorcery in there, just adding that extra layer of weirdness to it that I think is what makes this a cult classic. So I really like this movie. I have fun every time I watch it, but I'm very excited to hear what you guys think about Stunt Rock.
Well, I have always been wanting to see the Stunt Rock. A long, long time ago, my friends Blake Zell and John O introduced me to a musician named Stunt Rock, who I love. And we knew that he got his name from this movie, so we always wanted to see it. Or maybe they had seen it, but it being kind of hard to track down. I had never seen it. And I've always wanted to because I love that guy dearly. And then later on, finding out that it was Brian Trenchard Smith, that made me want to see it doubly so, because he made Leprechaun 4, and that movie rules.
Yeah. Well, Brian Trenchard Smith, I mean, he did a lot of cool movies in Australia, but then, he came to the United States and did stuff like Leprechaun 4 in space.
He continued his string of making really good movies. I agree.
Okay.
There's a lot of sequels. Like he did Night of the Demons too. He did Leprechaun 3 and 4.
Oh yeah.
So don't sell them short.
You're right. Actually, Leprechaun 3 is better than 4. So
is that the Vegas one or is 2 Vegas?
3 is Vegas.
Oh yeah. Okay. That is a good one. I like that one a lot.
Yeah. So I'm excited to finally see this, and I didn't really know what it was outside of the poster, which is rad. And yeah, you're right. It's it kind of doesn't know what it is, but it kind of knows exactly what it is. It is kind of, it's narrative, but it's kind of just a clip show for this dude, and it's kind of just a concert. And it, I feel like it is exactly what Brian Trenchard Smith wanted it to be, but also at the same time, it's so strangely put together. It maybe not. Maybe this is just a weird hodgepodge of compromises. It's kind of hard to tell. But that's kind of what I like about it, is that it is, very unlike anything I've seen. Concert movies existed before this, but this sort of does feel like kind of a precursor to maybe skate videos and stuff like Jackass, where it's just hey, we're just gonna like do a bunch of weird stunts and play music and have like just this weird energy, and it's sort of a story, not really, and it'll be made for people at drive-ins who are, you know, kind of half drunk and half stoned anyway, so whatever's good.
Well, don't you guys wish that there were more movies like this? Because like you know, this past weekend I was watching this thing called That's Entertainment. That's like a 2-hour long compilation documentary of just all like the best dance sequences from the MGM musicals of like the olden days, you know? And I think there's room for like a stunt version of that, you know, like just get all the best stunts from all the movies from the 70s, where maybe you don't have the time to watch the entire movie, you know, all the time, but if there's a, you know, compilation of all the greatest stunts, you know, with some narration, maybe some context, some behind the scenes footage, I think that'd be rad.
Yeah, I'd be into that. There's like a movie that was made at Warped Tour like a long time ago. It's like a horror movie, and it sort of has that same feel too. Like there's sort of loosely like a slasher movie going on, but it's mostly just an excuse to like have like film performances by a bunch of bands and like show like skateboarding tricks and stuff like that. So yeah, I definitely feel like, you know, more stuff like that where it's just like an excuse to compile cool stuff. That could be more of a genre for sure. And this movie sort of pioneers that, and I like it for that. Sorcery, I probably wouldn't listen to their records, but I like that they're on some wizard shit. I think that's cool. It's kind of weird that it didn't take off, like, because I feel like I would go see this band. Like anybody, like if you mix magic with like really anything, like I'm probably down. Magic is cool, especially if you're doing it all weird.
I think just because they didn't have the tunes, man, you know.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, Alice Cooper brought the goods with the tunes. You know, he wasn't just guillotines and stuff. You gotta have something to hum along with after you leave.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Any bands out there struggling who are listening to this, just, you know, if you think you got good music but you haven't taken off yet, just add some magic. Combine your good music with magic. You'll make a fan of me.
Kevin Moss, tell that to Gene Simmons.
Yeah, I mean, you can argue how good their music is, but it's catchy. I mean,
the one song, the two songs maybe. You got what? Love Gun and Rockin' and Rollin' all over the night, whatever the hell that thing's called.
Detroit Rock City.
All right, they got three.
But yeah, so this is super fun. Yeah, I don't know. I love stunts and I love rock. So this is for me.
So yeah, this is the first time I'd seen this. I was actually aware of Sorcery's music, and I knew they were part of this movie, but I had never, you know, bit and watched it. And yeah, I don't know. It's weird. Like it's definitely like a hodgepodge. And I'd probably like recommend it to people who are just more into like kind of like trash 70s TV and like variety shows and stuff than I would maybe like hard rock or like heavy metal dudes. Just because I really think like stage show aside, like Sorcery's music, like you guys said, really kind of isn't up to snuff. And I thought like watching it, I was like, well, it was 78. Like maybe I'm being a little too rough. And then I just had to kind of like refresh my memory of like, you know, what else came out in like 1978. And it was like, no, there was Judas Priest and Rainbow and AC/DC and Sarah Thungal was starting to poke around and Heavy Load, and they weren't even actually the best band called Sorcery to put an album out in 78. There's actually another band by the same name that put out a record called Sinister Soldiers, which is like really fucking good. It was like Sabbath revival before Sabbath even broke up. So that's good stuff. But yeah, I think they were honestly just like also a little bit ahead of their time, because I think, you know, kind of playing this sort of hard rock, heavy metal type thing to maybe a more mainstream crowd that would be going to, you know, like a Magic Auditorium or something like that. I feel like the band that really kind of cracked that code wasn't really until like Trans-Siberian Orchestra, who can now play like an arena full of bankers. And you know, but you know, be presenting them with like a concept album about like Beethoven meeting the devil when they're not doing their Christmas stuff.
So I will say Sorcery did play Dick Clark's Halloween TV special not once but twice
which
nice.
I am desperate to find a copy of. I spent a good chunk of 3 a.m. this morning looking for that on YouTube to no avail. So if anybody out there happens to have a videotape copy, I won't even ask, who the source is. Just send it to me.
Yeah, do you think, plot-wise, I think one of the things that kind of, bothered me, which is, I know that sort of the intention was, it's just going to be kind of a clip show. It's almost sort of like a dual vanity project, which I think in and of itself is sort of unique and worth, it's kind of worth seeing just for that. But, you have this guy who is, a master stuntman, and then you have a band whose big thing is stunts. It just seems like the narrative journey would be they're struggling, maybe they're messing up some tricks, maybe they're just starting out, and, Grant comes over to the States and kind of brings them to the next level. And I feel like they were kind of both in a position where they just sort of don't want to, show off, where maybe, the band wasn't really willing to kind of step down a notch and sort of be, on their way up. I feel like that could have been, I think there could be, an interesting narrative there. But, that said, just the clips are cool, particularly the stunt work. I think the stunt work kind of outshines the music stuff. And I don't know if he ever name dropped it, but I know I saw a lot of people kind of pointing to this film as sort of a prototype for Death Proof. So I don't know, maybe Tarantino heads would want to check this out just to kind of see where he took some ideas from. But yeah, it's an interesting movie. I'm glad I watched it. I don't know if I'd ever revisit it, but it's definitely unique.
Yeah, it's certainly unique, and man, I love Stunt Rock. I think this thing is a lot of fun. This is one of the very first movies that I downloaded after watching that documentary, Not Quite Hollywood. Out of all the titles in that movie, this was the one that seemed like the concept alone was enough to just hook me in, and I felt then, and I still feel today that I think Grant Page should have won a no vote immediate free pass Oscar this year for his incredible work. I mean, they're giving out statues to guys that didn't fling themselves over a giant canyon on a tiny little rope. That's kind of bullshit if you ask me. This guy is going above and beyond. He's climbing up, free climbing up the sides of buildings with floppy ass bell bottoms on. I mean, that's not easy. He's climbing out of these burning cars, breaking through the windows. That's probably my favorite stunt out of all the incredible stunts in this, is the one where he's thrown through, the two windows of a car that is on fire, and he comes out fully on fire. It's insane. So I feel like the guy should have been recognized, especially because at the time, stunts were such a huge part of our culture. I was looking at the stuntman keyword on IMDb, and this movie came out shortly before both Hooper and The Stuntman, two movies that we've talked about here on the show. But it wasn't the first Stuntman movie by far. I mean, within the year prior, a bunch of movies about stuntmen had already come out. In fact, you had Brian Trenchard Smith's own film, Death Cheaters, from 1976. That's about two Vietnam War veterans turned stuntmen who then become spies for the U.S. government, or probably the Australian government, I would imagine. You had Hollywood Man, starring William Smith, from 76, about a stuntman making a movie with the mafia, which is actually a pretty good movie. Stunts from 77 with Robert Forster and Bruce Glover trying to figure out what really happened when a stuntman died on set. And even the French got into the act. 1977 also featured a movie called The Stunt Woman, featuring Jean-Paul Belmondo and Raquel Welch playing a duo of film stunt performers who go on adventures or something like this. So it was a big trend.
Yeah, and let's not forget this was also peak time for none other than Evel Knievel.
Well, and I think he is, to credit probably for this craze, because I was trying to figure it out, why are there all these stunt movies at the time? And I think it is that this was peak Knievel mania. So thanks to that guy, I guess, certainly this was not peak sorcery mania at the time. I don't think anybody in the country was clamoring for a sorcery film, but I think it's kind of interesting and cool that a band this obscure somehow landed a feature-length vanity project. There's not too many bands that have a project like this to their name, and I think the stage shows are really fun. The music, I guess, it's not incredible, but it's not bad enough to really turn me off and make me fast forward even. I can put up with this music because it's worth it to get these shots of this cool wizard guy with that, the stereotypical blue wizard hat, the pointy hat with the stars and the crescent moon on it. Like, I'm not sure when we all decided that wizards like to have these weird, silly hats, but I'm glad that we did, because it led to me as a child getting my favorite troll doll, which was the wizard hat troll doll that I had as a kid. I still wonder about, where that troll doll ended up. But this movie's fun. It really is kind of the concept, I guess, that I enjoy the most about it. I do give it a lot of credit just for being so brazen, with this bizarre concept to combine this magic / stunt band with the greatest stunt man in Australian history. And, the fact that they pulled it off reasonably well. I think that you do have the sense when you watch this that if they had more time, they could have done a better job. These narrative segments do suck. They do kind of drag things down. We don't need them. The Jackass movies figured out that you don't really need those to link up the stunts. But they either could have spent more time editing it, or maybe doing some new stunts, or making the narrative segments more interesting. But they didn't really do that. But it's fine, because the stunts are great. Good locations as well. You get some cool shots on Hollywood Boulevard. You get to see the Filthy McNasty's nightclub. You get to see Deep Throat playing at the Pussycat Theater on Hollywood Boulevard. That's kind of cool. Close Encounters is playing at the Cinerama Dome in one shot. There's some shots of the Man's Chinese. So I would love to see this get restored someday. The current pixels out there are not the best. I mean, it's watchable, but I would love to see what an Arrow Video or a Vinegar Syndrome could do with this, because I would love to watch this again with friends and have them experience it in a pristine, beautiful presentation. But barring that, if you haven't seen this, I recommend seeing this. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, we should probably mention the early appearance of Phil Hartman. Did you guys catch that?
No.
I did not catch that.
He was the assistant for the foreign lady.
Really?
At least that's how it's credited on IMDb.
Wow, I'll have to go back and check that out.
And I looked at early young pictures of him, and it does look like him, but I don't think he's really doing the voice yet. But I did see that in the listing.
Interesting.
Yeah, this would be his first credit, I guess, on IMDb. Wow. Before even the Gong Show movie? That's
craziness.
Yeah, I think he was the only person. If he's the character I'm thinking of, he's the only one that actually got a legitimate chuckle out of me, other than the drummer with the lucha hat, or I think that was the keyboardist. That was a weird character. But the whole where he's arguing about the flare gun for 10 minutes with the director, and then he finally goes over and acts like he fought for her to fire the flare. I thought that was pretty funny, even if it's a kind of a cliched bit. But I don't know, it got me.
Interesting. Well, there you have it, folks. I think that just about wraps it up for Stunt Rock. We are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we are going to get into our next feature of the evening, the documentary Cinemania from 2002. So stick around.
It's only the music and illusions of sorcery.
Tell your friends about junk food dinner.
What for?
Hate him so much.
What for?
Nobody likes this crap. They're just pretending. I like David Lynch. Oh, look at me. I got the most out-of-print records you ever saw.
Did you guys catch that?
Tell your friends.
What for? What for? What for?
Tell your friends. Junk food dinner.
No.
That David Lynch. No one likes him.
No. What for? No.
Did you guys catch that?
No.
There is no difference between the magic rhythms of Bill Robinson.
That's what the bill is about, a challenge. Whatever I am, whether it's a new me or an old me, remember, I'm still just an entertainer.
Well, what do you think I am? What do you think they are? What do you think the theater is? It's all entertainment. Believe me, there is no difference between the magic rhythms of Bill Robinson's immortal beats. You said that before. All right. Well, what did Bill Robinson do? He bounced through the stairs, didn't he? Now I have to complain of the same stairs. What's the difference with all theater? Tragic actor or below, let's not coming in burlesque, and I'm your entertainer. Hello, Everything that happens in life can happen where the villain is mean. That's entertainment.
Or the bride with the guy on the side.
Or the ball where she gives him her all. That's entertainment.
A gay divorcee who is after her ex.
It could be Oedipus Rex.
Where a chef kills his father and causes a lot of bother.
Thrown out of work. By the boss who was thrown for a loss.
By the skirt, who is doing him dirt?
The world is the same. The stage is the world of entertainment.
I go to films every day, and I see, 1, 2, 3 films a day, occasionally 4 or 5.
Film is a substitute for life. Film is a form of living.
La manie du cinéma, cinémania. La manie du cinéma, cinémania.
I moved here the day before the Fassbinder retrospective started.
Somehow Harvey knows the exact running time of every film.
But the commitment to cinema ultimately entails a commitment to, a technically deviant lifestyle. You're a big Betty Hutton fan, though.
most of the time. Once in a while she goes over the edge.
My psychiatrist told me yesterday, he said it's a compulsion. My going to film is a compulsion.
And I've seen both versions of this movie. Rocket Ship XM.
That is such a beautiful film.
Supposing the film is shown on Monday and Thursday and the following Wednesday at different times.
The real question is, how can I fit in the absolute maximum number of stuff that I want to see?
I would have like up to 7 films on a particular day, all of which I wanted to see.
I mean, we have to go to extremes once in a while.
It's all neurosis in a way. You know, the need to have to see films is neurotic in a way. But you can make neurosis, you know, a vehicle for discovery. The point is that what I always argued was that there was no reason why reality should be privileged. You know, like, who would want to live in this reality?
All right, welcome back to Junk Food Dinner. The next movie on the show today is going to be Cinemania from 2002. This is directed by Angela Christlieb and Stephen Kijak. I'm going to say that's how you pronounce it. Stephen Kijak has done a bunch of music documentaries. This Angela Christlieb did a few things in Germany, it seems, because this is, in fact, a German/American co-production, this documentary, which, honestly, it's a little bit surprising that it took 2 countries' monies to make something this cheap looking, but in fact, that is what happened, I guess. It is about 5 obsessed cinephiles who, throughout a year, I think, or so that they shot this, try to see as many movies as they can. You know, and they're working out their daily schedules to see these movies projected in cinemas across New York City. These cinephiles that are chronicled in the documentary are named Eric Chadbourne, Harvey Schwartz, Bill Heidbreder, Jack Angstrich, and Roberta Hill. And it's pretty much just that, what I said. It's just kind of a document of these people seeing movies. There really is no plot. It's just about 80 minutes of them going to the movies, explaining, how they live their entire lives around these opportunities to see these classic films on the big screen. This is a movie that I first saw, I guess, about 5 years ago at the Aero Theater in Santa Monica. At the time, I myself was in kind of a heavy cycle of film going, not to the extent of these guys, but, at least a few times a week I would be at one of the rep houses, whether it was, the New Beverly or the Aero or the Egyptian or the Hammer at UCLA or the New Art or one of the Lamleys or the ArcLights. I was, going out to a lot of movies. And much like in this movie and probably like in pretty much every city, the film-going community is just that. It's a community, and so I would see a lot of these same people around at all these places. I'd get to know some of them and would, enjoy, meeting up with these people and just kind of chatting outside the theater, sometimes even more than the movies themselves. So when I first saw this movie then, at the Aero, I really connected with it, and I felt like a lot of these guys in the documentary, I wouldn't say that they were fully representative of me. I didn't fully identify with them to a T, but there were certainly a lot of behaviors that I saw on screen that I could identify with, and little parts of myself that I could see up there on screen. And then when I realized, about halfway through this, that one of the guys featured in the documentary was one of the guys that I recognized seeing a lot of times at the Aero Theater, because he had moved, I guess, from New York to LA, in between the time of this movie and when I was hanging out at the Aero so much. I was like, oh shit, like that even brought it home even more for me. I'm like, yeah, I guess I am kind of sort of one of these guys to some extent.
Which guy is it that moved to LA?
Harvey Schwartz, the guy that's got the extensive soundtrack collection but doesn't own a record player. I think he's still kicking on the west side of LA. But I used to see him a lot. He was probably at one of the Corn Gorns with us. He was probably there in the crowd. So if you want to do like a Where's Waldo and zoom through all the faces on a crowd shot of one of those events, you'll probably see him in there. But like I said, there's not much of an arc to the story here, unlike a King of Kong, for instance. But it is kind of like a It's kind of like a cool chronicle of a time and a place, like so many of these documentaries that we enjoy are. I think, the majority of these spots are long gone. Some of the museums are still there, but a lot of these smaller cinemas, sadly, are no longer projecting, even before the pandemic. And it's just kind of cool to see these guys putting in all these old school efforts to get their movies watched. They're doing all these subway gymnastics to get to these different events, and they're keeping track of every movie they've ever seen since 1986, on this paper and pencil list that they're maintaining. And, one guy's developing a special kind of spreadsheet software to help him plan out, which movies he can possibly see in a given month. Back then it was not as easy as going on the internet and, checking out Fandango or whatever, or going onto Letterboxd and checking out what's streaming that way. These guys had to put in real work to get the chance to see as many movies as possible. And it's kind of cool in that way that this, I think, works as just kind of a psychological study of obsessive behavior in general, even if you're not specifically interested in retrospective film going, although if you listen to this podcast, you probably are. It's just kind of an interesting little dive into, human behavior at kind of the edges of society, and seeing how these people interact, within their own circle, but also seeing how they interact with people outside of their circle, I think is kind of interesting. And I will be endlessly charmed by the scene in this where two of the guys are sitting on a couch, in one of their apartments. And it's two older-ish guys, one older than the other, but, they're sitting there watching some old-ass, black and white musical on a videotape on this tiny little TV, and the couch is, crowded with videotapes. They got, tapes in their laps, and they're watching this thing, and they're just howling with laughter, like a first-run audience would have for this movie back in the 1930s or whatever, and they're just grinning ear to ear, at whatever jokes Carol Lombard is telling or whatever. And I think it's charming, that these guys are so passionate, and they are living their lives to what they perceive to be the fullest. And I think that's interesting. And you also get some perspective from the programmers and, curators and, even ticket takers from these venues to see, what they thought of interacting with these people over the years. And some of those stories are pretty funny. My favorite of the bunch, and probably most people's favorite, would be Roberta. She's the only woman of the group and also seems to be the oldest of the bunch. And she's been obsessively watching movies since the year 1950. And just seems to be kind of on another level intensity-wise from the rest of the bunch. And when you see that, the inside of her apartment, later in this movie, you kind of have this realization, she kind of suddenly seems almost like that old bag lady from The Labyrinth, the woman that's showing Jennifer Connelly all of her discarded stuffed animals or whatever. It's really kind of a sad moment. To see that, I guess the flip side of this intense love is, it can be crippling to the point where you're blocking out everything else in your life. And so I think there's some depth here, and I think you can watch this and, it's easy to come away from this and just be like, man, look at these dumb idiots, spending their whole lives doing nothing but watching these old ass movies. And it's easy to goof on these people, but I think that they are, like us in a lot of ways, maybe more ways than we want to admit. And I think this is a really interesting chronicle of a world that you don't usually get a window into. So if you like things like King of Kong, while this doesn't have quite the same arc as a King of Kong, I think it's similar in the way that it treats kind of a weird little subsegment of humanity, that maybe might be laughed at typically seriously. And I appreciate it for that. But what did you all think about Cinemania?
Well, when it comes to Cinemania, I'd never seen this or heard of it. And I feel like a lot of it's fabricated because these people all talk about how they're cinephiles, but none of them have seen Blade Runner 2049. So it's they're a little bit suspect. I don't know that you can really love cinema without having seen Blade Runner 2049. But also, yeah, I don't know. Like, I like it because it's a look at these weirdos who kind of don't exist anymore because, you know, there's probably not as many theaters showing as many different things anywhere in the world as there were at this point in time, in this place in time.
Pre-pandemic, I think this still existed in Los Angeles. That you could find guys like Harvey still around. They're kind of a dying breed because they are all getting older and none of them live the most healthy lives, you know. But
okay, well, yeah, that's probably true. But I mean, yeah, because I mean, they do like go to museums and stuff to watch movies. It's not just. I mean, I feel like they're not watching a lot of like Independence Day or Jurassic Park. So I feel like I guess you could probably watch movies all day long if you're also taking into account movies shown at museums and schools and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know, like you said, it's like they're kind of living the junk food dinner lifestyle. So it was like kind of boring. It's like, yeah, so what? You watch a lot of movies. I watch a lot of movies. I've seen 40 Jim Wynorski movies. How many have you seen? I don't make a movie about me and how much I like Jim Wynorski. So there was a little bit of that and a little bit of like, these people are all rude dickheads. So I kind of didn't want to spend a lot of time with them. So for a lot of it, I was like, you know, I don't know. I would like kind of go in and out of being interested in these weird lives. I do like that you like Roberta the best because they tell stories about her getting into fights with people in movie theaters. And I know that you can relate to that, Sean. So I liked that. Another point, well, joking aside about the fabrications earlier, at one point, one of the guys says that he saw 1,000 movies in a month one time, and he's a piece of shit because he would have to see 32.2 movies a day for that to be the case, and that is impossible. So that guy is full of crap.
I think he said
all these kids are pieces of shit.
You think he said what?
I think he said 8 months.
In 8 months?
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to redo the math, but that doesn't sound impressive at all. I've watched 1,000 movies in 8 months. Probably. I'm gonna redo the math. I'll check back in the next segment.
But to be fair, your 1,000 were mostly Dippy Doodads.
Well, I wish they would be. I think there are only 3 surviving Dippy Doodads. I would love to watch 1,000 Dippy Doodads. My movies were mostly just like Clerks over and over again. And there's one scene where the guy who's like real super into projection, I forget his name, he's talking about how he's going to get a cell phone so that he can call the projectionist when there's something wrong with the projection, and he doesn't want to call the theater and then get transferred to the projectionist. He wants to call right up to the projection booth. And so he needs a cell phone for that, so he can do it right there from his seat. And he goes on and on about this. And behind him, there's a guy just laughing at him and goofing on him. And the filmmakers see that, so they try to frame the shot. Like, they try to, they don't zoom in or like cut and like frame it a different way. Like, it's something with like I'm not a film nerd like these guys, so I don't know. Like they crop it out, they mat him out or whatever it would be, but like not all the way. So all they managed to do was like get closer in on the guy goofing on the guy. And I thought that was really sad to see. I felt bad for these guys at that point. That even I think that guy was like maybe the projectionist at that theater, which is why he was hanging around. So that even among projectionists and film people, these guys are getting goofed on. Made me a little sad for them. Also, when Roberta pulls out her stack of like movie theater cups with like movie tie-ins on them, I deeply related to that because I have about 1 million Avengers cups in my cupboard. So
man. She had those sick ass Jurassic Park cups that were tucked away so far back we didn't even get to see them. But I was glad that she told us.
Yeah, and she had the Last Action Hero one. So I guess they are seeing, blockbusters and things like that on occasion. Like they don't really go into like their viewing habits too much, like, which is kind of a weird part of this. Like, I would like to know, exactly what kind of movies they're seeing on the day to day.
Well, that one guy is hard for Godard.
Well, yeah, that's true. And that other guy, he was talking some shit about Godard. He was like, Breathless, that's kind of sucks.
It's boring.
Yeah. So
he likes Belmondo, though. I kind of agree with him, to be honest. I think Belmondo is better than the movie, but...
I haven't seen it yet. But I will. I can already tell I like Belmondo, though. He's got a cool name. So yeah, I don't know. Like, yeah, this is kind of interesting, I guess. Kind of frustrating. I don't know. It's okay.
Yeah, I was really excited to watch this when I first found out about like the loose concept. I only kind of like half read what it was about when you guys first suggested it, and I didn't realize it was about people that were seeing the movies in theaters. But ever since I started like joining like VHS groups and stuff, which I'm a very, very casual fan, I really only use them to, get recommendations from movies if I'm bored. But like you start seeing these people in those groups that are posting every day, like here's my watch list, and it's like a picture of like 10 movies, and you start like doing the math in your head about like how much time that they're taking with this, and I don't know, you become very curious about like what their lives are like, to me, or for me anyway. So I was interested to see this, and then when I found out they were actually like having to combat the subway system to like see these at like different art museums and stuff, it just added a whole other level of interest to it for me. I will say, to contrast you guys, as someone who worked in a retail pharmacy for 4 years, I really did not have any patience for Roberta. It was pretty much just a post-traumatic stress just every time that she got slightly uppity. I was thinking about some horrible woman yelling at me and trying to choke back vomit fast to spell of mothballs and cat piss. So I was mainly about the dudes. And yeah, I thought they were all pretty charming characters. I didn't really think that they were particularly annoying. And maybe that just speaks to the fact that, I spend most of my time with black metal weirdos. So maybe I have a little bit more patience for annoying people. And yeah, I guess if I had to give one like piece of criticism about the structure of the movie, is I really think it could have been better served if one of the talking heads was like a psychologist or like somebody that like worked in mental health care, just for the benefit of like the audience, especially like just like regular Americans who maybe have like no exposure to this kind of person, because I think at a surface level, and even though it is kind of obvious that a lot of these guys, like, I don't think anybody would really question that, like, Harvey kind of has, it's pretty apparent that he has Asperger's at least. And, Bill was kind of going through his, like, medication list. But I think particularly since they point out that, like, a lot of these guys are, like, living off disability, it probably would have benefited the viewer just to have some sort of expert come in and kind of talk about obsessive compulsive behavior for, like, 5 minutes to sort of show, like, hey, these guys aren't just leeches, like doing this for fun. They're not like the male equivalent of like a welfare queen. Like there is a psychological compulsion here. So I feel like the movie could have benefited from that a little bit. And I don't know, there was a couple of shots, like, and maybe it's just because movies from 2002 kind of look gross now, but where they like have these like extreme close-ups and they're kind of like sweaty and kind of oily, and it felt slightly exploitive, or like this scene where you can kind of like see like Eric's gut hanging out of his shirt, and it seems like the camera is kind of focused on it. Although I think somebody was nice enough to tell him, because like a scene later he's wearing a polo shirt. But I think it's pretty much
the homeboy with the bike jersey on the entire time.
No, that was Jack. Eric was like the older like guy that was like really loving the musicals. He was the guy whose apartment they were in, the only one that like actually watches tapes.
Yeah.
He was wearing like a button up in like one scene,
he like specifically mentions that he like put on weight, and you can like see his belly button poking through like the unbuttoned section. But like the next scene when they're on the couch, he's wearing a polo. So I'm kind of hoping that somebody was like, "Hey, Eric, do you want to change quick?" So I thought that was nice. But yeah, I really liked them. I thought all the guys were interesting. I like Jack a lot, who I think Parker seems to have hated. Particularly like when he went on his anti-Disney rant, I was like, oh yeah, this is kind of ahead of its time. It was like he's basically just like all three hosts of Chapo, like just mushed together. And then, I was just kind of like thinking that in my head. And then I looked like, what's he been doing? And if you like Google him on YouTube, like pretty much his entire internet presence is him like arguing about Marxism with YouTube personalities, which was pretty cool. So
I liked his like anti-Disney rant because at first it seemed reasonable. He was like, they're turning out, products of bad quality. The films aren't good. They're not creative. And they're piling into megaplexes. And also Walt Disney froze himself so that he could emerge from the ice and be our fascist overlord. He was crazy. And it's like, all right.
Well, what's your point? He's right.
Well, my mistake. I'm just retelling what happens in the movie.
Yeah.
Totally right.
But yeah, and also just God, what a life! Just I wish I had grandparents that just left me a lot of money and I could just do this. Yeah, it'd be nice if more people that were like wealthy through generational wealth just like spent all their time just chilling and watching movies and annoying projectionists, and that was the extent of their crimes. So yeah, I don't know. I had a lot of fun with this one. I don't know if it really needed to be a full-length documentary. I feel like this could have been like a 60-minute special, and you probably would have got everything you needed from it. And also really impressed by Harvey's record collection. That was a real wow moment for me.
Yeah.
Especially considering some of those were like very, very old movies even at the time, and all of those records were just pristine. Like you didn't see any damage on any of the sleeves or anything, and I don't know, it was just amazing.
Got to give a shout out to the on-screen appearance of the "What Do You Say to a Naked Lady" soundtrack on vinyl, a record which I'm also a proud owner of. So that was fun to see.
Yeah,
I did also, and I don't know when they recorded this, but there was a part of me that was wondering, what did these people do on 9/11? Because this was like released in 2002, and I'm just curious what they would have reacted to that day. Do you think they were at the MoMA at the same time? Do you think they were mad that the trains were shut down? I would just like to know what would have happened to these people on that day.
I would have loved to have seen that as well. I think they probably shot this like shortly before 9/11 is my guess.
Yeah, because you do see the Twin Towers at one point in the movie. But I was thinking the same thing. Only I was like, what did these people do, assuming that they're still living the same lifestyle during the fucking pandemic? Were they just like committing suicide left and right, or what? Because I can imagine them just freaking out.
I would imagine that, some of them must have caved by now and, would be streaming stuff even before the pandemic. But
yeah, well, I think I actually like really looked into this. I tried to do like a "Where Are They Now" thing, and I found the interview with Jack, and I guess Bill actually did move to Paris. The very, very Jewish gentleman. He actually went to Paris. So he lives there now. Sean mentioned what happened to Harvey. He moved out west, and I guess Jack and Eric, the two guys that were in the apartment together, they were still hanging out as at least in 2012.
Yeah, Roberta
so 10
passed
years
away.
later, they were still hanging around.
Roberta passed away in 2009.
So we're talking death?
Yeah. Yeah, I had never seen this movie before. I didn't really know much about it, but I do love documentaries about nerds, like you mentioned. I mean, I love King of Kong. I love Trekkies and Trekkies 2. Like, those are some of my favorite documentaries. And, even if it's not something that I myself share a, fandom for, I just like seeing people's enthusiasm for whatever nerd endeavor that they're into. So these are usually right up my alley. And obviously, as somebody who watches a lot of films and I'm kind of obsessive about old movies and, shares a lot of the same qualities with some of these people. Yeah. You would think this would be right up my alley. And I do love, New York City theaters and film going, and it was cool to see some of those theaters and all that stuff. But I wish I could have latched onto this more. I don't know. There was something about this, and I hate to speak ill of the cast of this because, you know, like you guys mentioned, it is fairly obvious that they all have, or most of them have some sort of, you know, they're on the spectrum in some regard. But I didn't like any of these dudes or this lady. In fact, they all kind of sucked. Harvey seemed the best of the group in terms of he had a very carefree attitude. He seemed like he was having fun. He'd go see anything.
He liked Attack of the Crab Monster, Kevin.
He liked Attack of the Crab Monster. He had that kick-ass vinyl collection. Harvey was if I had any dude in the movie, it was Harvey. But the rest of these people, here's where they lost me. Is, you know, a lot of these nerd documentaries, even though these people are very introverted and very, you know, classically just nerdy, there is a camaraderie amongst them, and I didn't feel that. In fact, they even say, like, these people don't like to have parties together. They're not there to see each other. They're there to see the movie. If these other people are there, they could give a fuck less. Like, they're not friends, really. This group of people, they're not friends. They just know each other from seeing each other at all the movies. But you can tell none of them really like each other. And, like, especially, like, Roberta, she doesn't give a fuck. She just, you know, she's there to do what she wants. And they all live, you know, I mean, again, I can't judge anybody because, I have plenty of obsessive habits and, you know, nerdy compulsions. But, you know, it does feel like all these people have let their hobby become, I don't know, a detriment to their regular life. And it's not something that they're doing for fun. It's out of compulsion. And in a certain way, you feel bad for them. But on the other hand, like I said, they're dickheads to one another, to the staff of these places that they quote unquote love so much. None of them are above sneaking into movies, so they don't really give a fuck about, you know, financially supporting these institutions that they claim to love so much. And the fact, I mean, I get it. If you live in New York, you want to get the fuck out of your shitty apartment. You know, I get that. And I can see maybe living in New York would kind of feed this kind of compulsion because, you know, if you lived in a shitty, you know, 1-by-1 apartment with just covered in shit, you'd want to get the fuck out of Dodge and go sit in an air-conditioned nice theater. I think that's also part of it. But I don't know. I think these guys are, for the most part, I don't know. All these kids are pieces of shit. Yeah, they've taken something that should be fun and you know, and turned it into work. And I don't know if they even really like the movies they're seeing. They just want to see them just to say they've seen them. It's I don't know. It's a strange thing. I like, you know, like when I watch Trekkies, I'm like, that's awesome. These nerds have this community together. They're doing good for the community. They're smart people getting together, just doing nerdy shit. For this, I didn't feel the same connection with these folks. I felt either pity or outright disdain for them at certain times. Just because, you know, I put myself in the shoes of those, like, projectors and those people that they annoy, and the fucking poor girl taking the ticket that Roberta fucking strangled. Like, fuck these people. You're a nuisance to, like, actual people who enjoy going to films. Like, I don't know. It was bothersome in some regard. But again, I did feel a little bit of level of camaraderie as a fellow movie nerd. But I am also curious because, like, I really want to know, like, what these guys' thoughts are now. Like, you know, because how many of them were staunchly against video? Like, was it just because of picture quality, or do you feel like you have to see it? Because, like, I would wonder what they think about, like, Blu-ray and stuff now. Or like I said, you know, now that most theaters have gone digital, I bet that annoyed the shit out of them. I'm sure there's, you know, I would like to know how they do their movie going now that probably half the theaters, if not more, that they used to go to are gone. And like I said, I would love to hear how the pandemic affected them if they're still deep in this habit of theirs, because I can imagine that only drove him completely insane.
I know Jack said in the interview I read with him that he was excited about. It was kind of funny because it was like 2012, which was already kind of the Blu-ray era. But he said that he was excited about the prospect of DVD extras, and he did mention that he really liked. He had no issue with like streaming or watching like video for like digitally recorded media. Which was funny because it reminded me a lot of like what some of my like vinyl friends say about, if it was recorded digitally, you can listen to it on CD, but if it was analog, you have to listen to it on vinyl. So, yeah, again, I feel like my relationship with metal weirdos probably helped me like these people a little bit more.
Well, I mean, and we all know folks like this in any kind of sub-genre of nerddom that you're in. There's always the guys that take it too far and that are even outcast amongst the outcast, where you're like, okay, this dude, take it easy, buddy. Like, we're just here to have fun. But I don't know. Those aren't really, like Parker said, those are not really people I want to spend a ton of time with. I'm sure Mark Fredo has some great stories about guys like this from the Spectacle Theater that have made his job miserable from time to time. Go ahead. Sorry. But yeah, it seems like a very New York or LA kind of thing to do. I don't know if we have this level of film nerds in the Midwest.
Speaking of confrontation, I was thinking of the one in the film. Where do you guys stand on leaving a jacket on the seat to preserve it?
I mean, I think that's a totally acceptable maneuver. People got to respect the jacket. I mean, what's a guy not going to take a pee break before the movie?
Yeah, that's what I thought. I don't know where that old guy got off.
Yeah,
I agree.
Well, fair enough. Yeah, they're right every once in a while, and yeah, I respect them for their film purity and wanting to see nice, clean prints and correct aspect ratios and all that stuff. But at a certain point, you just gotta chill out. Well,
fair enough. And, I can understand that, these guys might be a little bit abrasive for some audiences, but I still think it's pretty unique little slice of a weird time and place. And I had a good time going back to it, but it's out there, it's like you said, it would be interesting to catch up with these guys again. It's been almost 20 years. So if the filmmakers are out there and they want to make a sequel to this, you got at least me willing to check it out. So we will take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking about The Burrowers. Stick around.
Hey, fellas, come on down and taste something new. Right, Uncle Ernie? In your dreams. Pizza! Bizarric, man! Chips! New pizzerias! Cranking with real pizza dough! Cheese? Spices? Radical grub! Tastes like real pizza! Only louder! Pizzerias rule! Groovy chips, huh, boys? What do you say? chips, huh, boys?
Indians. They killed. They took Marianne, took the whole family.
What kind of weapon makes a wound like that?
We'll find him. We don't quit. We don't sleep.
Looks like you found yourself a hole in the ground there, Will.
What do you think, cowboy?
I don't know. Another right there. This is something we ain't seen before.
Who takes men and horses and leaves the valuables to rot?
Woke up. He says another tribe, miners.
He didn't say miners. He used the word for when animals dig, burrow maybe. Why would they bury her alive? I don't know. Once you get to Fort Lincoln, you stay with her. We'll pick you up on our way back.
Those weren't Indians.
Welcome back to Junk-Fried Schlitzie. The final Schlitzie this evening is called The Burrowers. This is a 2008 movie directed by J.T. Petty, who has directed some other genre fare. In addition to directing the short film of which this movie is based on, which was called Blood Red Earth, he directed The Mimic Part 3, Hellbenders, which just came out recently, and I've been wanting to see, and Sandman, a.k.a. S&M Man, which I have seen, which was a movie they talked about on the Kissing Contest show a long time ago. It's kind of a ghoul summer extravaganza.
Is this going to be a ghoul summer?
It's kind of a ghoulish film. So yeah, this is a movie that Zach picked. So we'll find out the mystery as to why here shortly. But to run down the plot, it's the late 1800s in the old-timey West. Letterboxd says it's in the Dakota Territories, even though it was filmed in New Mexico and looks like New Mexico. A crew sets out to retrieve some kidnapped settlers who have mysteriously vanished. And while they're out in the woods looking for these folks who they feel like were probably kidnapped by either ne'er-do-wells or some sort of native tribe, they run afoul of other dickhead dudes. They run afoul of themselves. They run afoul of, most importantly, evil monsters. So yeah, it's sort of, this movie is remarkably similar to Bone Tomahawk, which is a movie I love. And it's kind of understated for a long time in that it's these folks just kind of getting in their own way while following the trail of whatever the culprits may be in this. There's a lot of interpersonal dramas going on. Mostly these people are just kind of dealing with themselves for a long amount of the runtime. Really kind of, foreshadowing the deeper scariness for a while, holding it back, ratcheting up the tension both amongst these people and their interpersonal dramas and the tension from the titular burrowers. There are a few cool actors in this. Clancy Brown, my old boss, is in this, who plays probably my favorite character. Jocelyn Donahue from House of the Dead is in here. We've also got, what's his face? William Mapother. I like those guys. He's in this. He is one of the dudes from Lost. We talked about him a while back. He was in that movie that I like a lot, Another Earth. He's a really good actor. I think he's really good in this. And so the spoiler alert here for the monsters that are going to pop up. They are these weird creatures that live underground, and every 3 generations, according to the local natives, they pop out. They find people, they inject them with this weird poison that makes them go, like, kind of paralyzes them, at which point the monsters bury them and then come back once they've started to decompose so that they can eat them. And it's a grimy thing that they do. I think the monsters, the lore of them is really cool. It's kind of an It / Jeepers Creepers sort of a thing. Like this, I think about them kind of popping up every X amount of years to feed, and then they go back underground. And I like that a lot. And one thing I really liked about it, and I think it's just kind of in my head because of this past summer, but I felt like it was sort of a Brood X situation, and I really liked the idea that these are just like natural beings, sort of like cicadas living underground, and then they pop out, but instead of just kind of making a lot of noise and being crunchy, they kill people. But by the end, the movie kind of makes it very explicit that they are supernatural and not just like weird monsters, which I guess we'll get to, because I want to know if you guys think that these things are vampires or not, because I kind of think that they're vampires, some sort of weird vampire cousin. But I think they look cool as well. They're largely CG, although there are some practical effects. The design of them is perfect, and I think this director keeps them in the dark enough that it hides a lot of the seams on the 2008 low budget CG. But I don't really think that you could do them otherwise, because they are such a like strange, unique sort of. They have this weird, strange, unique biology that I don't think a guy in a suit could really work out. So I think that they kind of have to be CG to pull off, and I think that their look is creepy enough that it works out in the end. I like this movie a great deal. I think that the monsters are sufficiently creepy.
it a great deal.
I do like it a great deal. The monsters are very creepy. I like a lot of the drama going on, the kind of the tension from all sides sort of a thing, these people trying to figure out this mystery. There's one aspect of this that I like a lot, where one of the guys sort of speaks whatever the tribal language is in the area. And so in translating, because at one point they talk to some of the natives and they kidnap one at one point, like the game of telephone between the characters, I think is really cool and effective. Like, he only picks up some words, so they don't have complete communication. And then the other guys who don't speak it at all, he will withhold some information from them, and vice versa. Like, I don't know. I think it really works out, and it really adds to like the kind of paranoia and things. So I like that. There's also kind of an element of this where, like, if the white people would just shut up and listen to the natives, like, they'd be fine, which I really like a lot too. And so, yeah, I thought this was really cool. I'd never heard of this. But I mean, I'm always down for like a Weird West story. I think it's because of my love of Craig Zoller. I think it's fast becoming a genre that I care for greatly, and want to get more into, and this falls into that. So what do you guys think about it, including you, Zach? Why did you pick this movie for us?
Okay, yeah. So I picked this one mainly because, like you, I'm a huge Weird West fan, and I'm also just a big fan of this sort of era of horror, because before I found like my video store that had all the VHS tapes, like I was kind of, forced to live off what Hollywood Video provided. So I watched a lot of mid-budget Lionsgate fare. But this one I had somehow missed. And I was originally going to pick Dead Birds, which was a similar film, but that one has awful CG to the point that it's kind of hard to look past. And this one had good reviews, so I was like, let's check it out. Overall, I was pretty happy with it. It pretty much is, I think, one of the best of this level of weird Western films that I've seen. I do think it suffers a little bit in retrospective, just because we are living in a post Bone Tomahawk world. So I do think you have to, if you've seen that film, you're going to end up comparing it to that, and it's kind of to this film's detriment. I do think, just if I had to criticize it a little bit, sometimes, no pun intended, it feels like it's circling the wagon a little bit. I think you can kind of tell that it was originally a short film, and it seems like a lot of the middle, particularly like after they leave the cavalry, which I was kind of sad to see them walk away from them, because I thought Doug Hutchinson as the cavalryman with the god awful mustache was a particularly effective villain. But I do feel like it drags a little bit, and it kind of has a couple false starts and finishes. For me anyway. So I think there was a slight pacing issue for me. I think it could have used just a little bit more. I wouldn't mind a couple like stereotypical Western monologues just about, sort of taming of the frontier and, all those Western tropes. I feel like it could have used some of those. And I do feel like Clancy Brown was a little underutilized, because he was kind of the highlight of this movie. But yeah, creature design, I like, particularly because, of this era, it would have been very easy to just, make them long-faced ghosts that lived underground. And the fact that they're these like kind of weird, like maggot cricket people, is an interesting choice. I like that they attempt to, interject a little bit of mythology behind them, without going too overboard and kind of boring you to death with details. I like the slight environmentalism nod, or sort of the anti-manifest destiny element, with the whole situation basically being a result of us killing the buffalo. I thought that was cool. And the ending also very bleak.